Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Come in, come in, come in. This is Tamika's Den. I am Tamika. This is The Oval Next to a Possible, Season 3, Episode 18. And we basically picked up where we left off, guys, okay? With freaking Alan coming up in the office. I don't know exactly what he was trying to do, okay? Coming up in the office and, Hunter's asking him what the hell is he doing in there? And he's saying that he came there because Donald sent him. And he's like, well, why wouldn't he just, have called me on the phone? What would he be sending you here for? And he was like, oh, he just wanted me to check and make sure you here. So you're here, so I'm going to go ahead and, see my way out. And so, I'll let you get back to work, sir. And so, of course, Hunter's talking about something. You'll do nothing of the sort. You'll just stand there, since you came in here and to see where I was. And he's basically like, Hunter, Alan is saying, oh, I see, sir. And so he was like, listen, I'm going to go ahead and let the chief of staff know that you was right here where I thought you would be. And Hunter tells him, you will do that when I dismiss you and not a minute sooner. And Alan is still saying I should get going. And so Hunter turns and tells him, no, Hunter was like, what are you doing? Because at one point, Alan turned around and just standing there. I guess he wanted to pull the daggone gun out. And Hunter also was telling him, oh, I liked Ellie. I'm so sorry about what happened to her. And Alan says, I am too. And he was basically like, yeah, I miss her. I remember one time when I was on this call and she was basically under the desk, doing the best job I've ever had. And like, does she do that sometimes for you too when you would be out there at your little cubicle? So he's just, basically playing Alan. And of course, Alan is getting pissed off and he's trying to get the hell up out of there. At this point, Victoria comes in and she's looking confused too. Like, what the heck are you doing in here? And then Hunter tells her, well, apparently, he was sent here to check up on me, but I think he was just leaving. And so he's just looking at both of them like they crazy. And Victoria's telling him to go on and she's like, are you hard of hearing? And so he just nods his head and go ahead and walk himself out. And so she's basically like, what the hell is going on here or whatever. She's like asking Hunter, why was he in there and what is wrong with him? And so he was like, well, apparently, like I said, Donald sent him to check on me. And then she has asked the same thing. She's like, well, why would Donald do that? Why didn't he just call? And Hunter says, that's a really good question, Victoria, okay? And so he was like, why didn't he? And so she was like, well, anyway, I wanted to talk to you about something. And he was like, about what? And, as a matter of fact, she said she was going to talk to Donald about sending him. And he was like, why would you do that? And she was like, anyway, honey, you're an asshole and you would torture that kid. And he said, guilty as charged, and so would you. And so, that's all you do is torture him, me, and everybody else. And so she says, what else would she do to enjoy her day? And so he's like, what can I do for you? Basically like, what the heck did you come in the office for? And she was like, I spoke to the, second lady. And he was like, and she was like, and she's not backing down. And he was like, well, I told you they was like, bunch of Boy Scouts. And she was like, we have to come up with another plan. And he tells her good luck. And then she tells him that she spoke to Jason's doctor and he is improving, which I figured he would. And he was like, really? And she was like, yeah. He was like, wow. She said he may even regain consciousness. Okay. And so Hunter's like, well, that's a miracle. And she gonna talk about, is it? I'm telling you. And so he was like, what are you saying? And she was like, look, I want the little sucker to live, but we don't want him to get well too fast, okay? And he was like, okay, I'm not even listening to this. And she's like, Hunter, he's like, no. And she was like, look, he could ruin our plan. And so he says, do you hear yourself right now? And she was like, don't you dare judge me, okay? You were just applauding me when I was at that podium spinning this shit, okay? And so, he was like, Victoria, do you have a bottom? She gonna talk about, yeah, I do. But you just can't seem to reach it. So he was like, you know what? I don't want to listen to this anymore. I'm done. She was like, well, we have to make a decision about this. how soon that he could get better. And she was like, what are you saying? And she was like, wow, you leave everything to me when it comes to the kids. And he was like, then you pretend when you know damn well you wanted to do it. And he was like, I don't know what you're talking about right now. I want nothing. And so she was like, okay, all right, you go with that. And then she basically walks out. So I'm like, well, what Victoria trying to do? Okay, she trying to kill off the damn child herself. I wouldn't put it past her, y'all. But we shall see. And so then you had, you know, Alonzo come in the office and say, give it to me. And Alan like, what? He was like, give me the gun. He said, I looked over the footage again and again, and you bent over for something, okay? You not slick. And so he's like, where is it? And Alan's like, I don't know. And he was like, come on, stop playing to me. Give it to me right now, or I will walk down and tell the chief of staff. And so, Alan is like, okay, calm down, calm down. And he was like, Alonzo says, do you want to go to jail? Alan says no. And he's like, okay, where is it then? Hand it over, give it to me, okay? And so, at least Alonzo was paying attention. He seems to be the only one in the White House that's actually just doing his job to be doing it. Well, maybe Sam too, okay? But he says he's sorry, and he does give him the gun. So I said, damn, Alan, you couldn't even get past with that one. And he says, ask Alan, what was you going to do? And he was like, I just wanted it to protect myself. And Alonzo was like, from who? And he was like, who you think? The people that they sent after me. And then he's like, Alan. And then, Alan is just like, I'm sorry, okay? And so he was like, when we get out of here tonight, we have to have a long talk. And so Alan is just like, okay. And Alonzo was telling him, you lost your damn mind. No, Alonzo, if you knew what these people was up to, you would know. He ain't lose his mind yet, okay? And so then you got Victoria being freaking nasty with the maid and saying, she don't do a good enough job, and if she don't do whatever, then she gonna get rid of her. And you got Donald coming up saying he needs to talk to her. He's like, it's about Cal. And she's like, well, what's up with him? What's the matter with him? Where's she at? And he's like, stop it, ma'am. He was like, Sam sent Grip home. And she was like, why? She was like, because of what, Donald says because of what happened with your son. And she was like, oh, well, he shouldn't have sent him home for that. And he was like, yeah, I know that. That's why I told him to bring his ass right back here. And she was like, okay, so you came up here to tell me that. And he was like, no, ma'am, I actually came to talk to you and tell you that, Cal has been missing. And I believe that they are holding him somewhere here in the White House. He came into the White House, but we haven't seen him since. And she's like, what? And he's like, yeah. And she's like, she goes, this is my problem. Why? And he was like, well, I would think that it would be a problem because of what he knows, and all that he knows. And she was like, where is he? And so he was like, well, that's a little bit more to the story, because I believe Sam is working with the vice president, and I believe Sam is holding him somewhere in this White House. And so she's like, what? And then he's like, yes. And so she asked him, is he sure? And he was like, I think I'm right. And she was like, there's a difference in thinking you're right and being sure. Those are two different things. You know what I'm saying? And so he was like, well, I need you to distract him. And she was like, well, how the heck am I supposed to do that? You're his boss. He was like, yeah, but you're his. And she was like, I'm his what? You know what it is, Vic. Okay, you know what it is. And he was like, well, anyway, ma'am, I need you to distract him for me. Can you do that? And so he was like, you're pretty good at that, right? And so she tells him to get out of here. And he leaves. And so, then she just sitting there shaking her head or whatever have you. And I was like, yeah, Victoria, you was playing the game and chasing behind him any other time, so it shouldn't be too hard for you to do that now, girl. Don't act like you know what I'm saying, too above it. And so then you had Barry sitting having a conversation with Sharon. He's just basically saying to her that it hasn't always been, bad between them, and it doesn't mean that everything has to be a lie. At one point they did love each other. And she's like, okay. And he's like, no, Sharon, for real, I do love you. He was like, and I'm sure there's a piece of you that still loves me too. And at this point, she just still keeps sitting there saying, all right. And he was like, at one time we were good together. It wasn't always bad. Actually before my daughter was taken, we got along very well, we had some really good times. And then he was like, come on, admit it. You can't even admit that, it wasn't all bad, and at one point he's asking her, like, am I that bad? No, seriously, am I really that bad? And she was like, well, you can be, and so he was like, well, I guess that could be true or whatever the case may be, but I could be good too. And so, he's like I said, he said when Callie was here, things was good between us. And she's just like, yeah, okay. He was like, yeah, before Ruth took her and before all this craziness, you know what I'm saying, we were actually doing good. Things were good between us. And so she's saying, if you say so. And he was like, you could say so too, And she was like, yeah, it could be good at times or whatever the case may be. And he was like, see, and she was like, at times. And he was like, okay. And she was like, but we got to have more than that to hold on to. And so he was like, I know, but. And then she was like, no, 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 no buts. Just stop, just stop, just stop. And like I said before, I'm sure I've said it before, I don't get Sharon and Barry's relationship because we don't know what they really had before Callie was taken, right? We pretty much have been dealing with their relationship from ever since Callie got taken. But I just know that Sharon's relationship with him and the way she acts towards him is very freaking weird to me. And I don't understand why Barry even bothers chasing her, because she always, some kind of way be trying to diss him and have something negative to say. So it just confuses me. I'm like, Barry, let it go. But anyway, we had Donald come in, and he's trying to tell Hunter the same thing he just was telling Victoria about Cal. But before he can even tell him, of course, Hunter's like, why did you send that boy in here? And Donald's like, what boy? And he was like, that kid that's out there that be at the desk. And he was like, Alan? And he's like, yeah. And he was like, he said you sent him in here and that you wanted him to find something out. And he was like, what exactly did he say? And so, Hunter's like, he didn't say anything really. He was sort of just weird. Well, it was kind of weird, kind of aggressive and very uncomfortable. He's like, Donald tells him, I'm sorry about that and I'll talk to him. And so he was basically like, all right. And so, of course, he's like, well, he definitely won't come back. That's for sure. And Donald's like, well, why do you say that, sir? And then Hunter's like, oh, I talked a lot about Ellie's job skills. And he's like, of course, saying, sir, what exactly did you say? Okay, did you use those exact words, sir? And so, of course, he's like, the best defense is a good offense. And so he's like, Donald, look, what did you want? What is it? And so he starts to tell him about, the whole fact that Cal is missing. And he was also saying, maybe you may not want to talk like that when he's with, Alan is concerned. And he's like, oh, duly noted. And so he's like, well, sir, I've been trying to take care of this. I am taking care of it. I've been on it this entire time. But it's Cal, sir. He's been MIA for about 30 hours now. And he was like, what? And he's like, yeah. So he was like, well, where is he? And he was like, so listen, I didn't want to worry you. And so, Hunter basically says, if you didn't want to worry me, then you wouldn't have came and told me anything. And he was like, well, I'm sure it's going to be fine. And Hunter says, it doesn't sound fine. And he's like, don't lie to me. Listen to me. Look at me. And then, Donald's like, yes, sir. He's like, don't lie to me. And so he was like, is he with the vice president? He's like, oh, no, 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 sir. It's nothing like that. Don't ever think that. He's not, sir. And so Hunter's like, how do you know? And he was like, I'm telling you, he's not. I know him, so it's not no situation like that. He's not doing that. And so he was like, you understand, if he turns on us, we're done. And he was like, no, sir, he won't. He said, I just wanted to get ahead of this. And so, Hunter's like, we can't let that happen. And he was like, sir, I know Cal, he's not doing that, trust me. And so, Hunter's basically like, all right. He was like, but so where is he then? And he was like, well, we're working on that. And he was like, is he still alive? He was like, sir, I'm on it, trust me. He was like, we gotta find him. So he was like, sir, we'll take care of it, don't worry, I just wanted you to know. And so, Hunter's basically like, okay, he's still telling him to trust him. And so I'm like, all right, let's see what, old Donald's gonna come up with, because they are all a hot damn mess, y'all. And then, we had Bobby and Max meeting with the vice president and the second lady. They're saying that they're trying to see what's going to be next. They're trying to get this agenda passed. Bobby's like, it's always back to politics. They're like, not for all of us. And he was like, sir, look, I know you're a good man, but you're fighting evil and you must meet evil with evil. And so the vice president is telling Bobby, you got to hang in there with us, and the second lady is saying that they are going to do what they have to do, and Max is like, is this about you being president? And, the vice president says it's about both. Doing what's right will make him president. And so, Bobby says, and you first lady. And she's like, well, yes, And so, of course, this is frustrating for Bobby and Max because they want to get ahead and, have their names cleared and be able to have these people pay. And it seems like they just feel like they just playing politics. And so they was even saying that maybe they could possibly do something to Jason so that the truth wouldn't come out. And they was like, do you think that they are capable of doing that? And they said, yes, absolutely they do. And so they was like, the next thing is also to deal with Kyle and Donald. And so the vice president lets them know I actually have Kyle. And, Max is like, well, I want him. He was like, I can make him talk. And so the vice president talking about we don't do torture. And, Max is like, that's sweet. Sir, that's the only thing he'll understand. Okay, any other talking you do is not going to get nothing done. And so the vice president is like, we have him in a bunker at the White House. And you're going to have to go there and get him first. Sam has him, And so basically he was like, we had to make sure that it was a secure area and a separate area. And so they was like, how would you get him out? And so Max is saying send them in. And then the vice president is like saying it's too risky. And she was like, do you trust your guys to do it? And he says no. And she was exactly, he said, Max says exactly, so then let us go in. And so he was like, okay, but if you detain him, how would it go from there? And he was like, Sam could work that out. And he was like, well, he'll have to be careful, And so Max is like, okay, well then let us talk to him. And he said, okay, but not on the phone. He'll arrange it. And so they say, okay. And, then they like, thank you for coming and thank you for all you do for the country or whatever the case may be. And so then the vice president was like, well, wait, let's discuss all the evidence we had. And they talk about Diane and, they need to get everybody there because they need to have this meeting and meet up with all of the senators or whatever the case may be. So that all this evidence could be out and they could know what's what and everybody be on the same page. And so, then Bobby and Max go ahead to leave. And so we then had, Donald, of course, talk to Alan, tell him to have a seat. And, he's like, did you go to the Oval? And so I don't know why Alan said that or did that, and he knew it was gonna come back to him. And he was like, you gotta talk. And so Alan is like, yes, I did, sir, And he was like, why? And so Alan is basically like, I wanted to. And then Donald says, I wanted to is not an answer, boy. Okay, spit it out. Why did you go in there? And so he was like, well, I wanted to see the president, sir. And so he was basically like, you still not saying anything, And Alan was like, I just wanted to talk to him. And so he was basically like, about what? And so Alan was like, about Ellie. And Don was like, what? And he was like, yeah, I wanted to talk to him about Ellie. And so, I just wanted to, make sure he knows what's going on. And so he was like, so you went there? And he's like, yes, sir. Yeah, I did, And he was like, why would you do that? And so Alan is basically like, I just wanted to make sure that he was aware that Ellie was gone, that she's dead, And And Donald's like, he's aware. And he was like, yes, sir, And so he was like, Donald was like, look at me. And he looked at him or whatever have you. He's like, are you sure that's the only reason why you went in there? And then Alan is like, yes, sir, that's the only reason. And so, Donald was like, what did he say? And so, Alan is like, not much. And she was like, boy, don't sit there and lie to my face, I swear. And so Alan was like, yeah, he didn't really say much. He was just very condescending, And Donald says, do you know why that is? And then Alan said, yeah, because I stepped out of line. And then Donald's like, yeah, you did. And don't you ever do that again. Do you understand me? And then Alan is like, yes, I did. Yes, I do, sir. Sorry. I will never do that again. And so he was like, I'm sorry. And Donald basically just told him to go to his office or whatever have you. So I'm like, whatever. Like, that was just kind of a waste of time, to be honest. But, it is what it is. And so then Donald was just looking at him as he, left out. And I'm like, come on, Donald. You know damn well he went in that office, okay, for more than just to tell him about some damn Ellie. And so, you had Sam and the guy, what is his name, y'all? Y'all know I be bad with names sometimes, and I just said his name earlier. The one that took the gun back from Alan. You had them two sitting at the computers talking. He was basically giving him the update on he was telling him to go up and see Victoria. And he was like, matter of fact, go up there, check and see what she wants. Because she called down and specifically asked for Sam. But, of course, Sam don't want to be bothered. And he's asking him, is he too nervous or scared to go? And he's like, no. And then he was like, yes, sir, I'm on my way. So he goes to go up there to see what's happening. Of course, we know that Victoria wants him because Donald wanted her to go ahead and distract Sam. But Sam ain't falling for it. And so then you had Grip come back in. And he's like, Agent Griplin. And he was like, yes, sir, I got your call. And so he was like, what do Grip asked him what he want to talk about. And he was like, there's a lot actually to talk about. And, but not right now. And he was like, don't play games with me. And so Grip is like, yes, sir. He was like, the chief of staff wants to talk to you. So he was like, yes, sir. And so, he sends him to go ahead there. And he sits back down at the computer. So at this point, Alonzo or Alfonso, whatever the heck his name is, I know it's something with an A, he comes up and he's like, ma'am. And so she's looking like, what's going on? She was like, I needed Sam, because he asked if she needed anything. And he was like, and before he could finish, she was like, he's what? She was like, he's on assignment with the chief of staff, sir. And so she was like, are you lying to me? And he was like, no, ma'am. That's basically what he told me. And she was like, no, you are. Is he avoiding me? And so he's like, no, ma'am, he would never do that or whatever have you. And so she's like, you are so full of shit. You are so full of shit. He was like, no, ma'am, I'm not, And so she was like, just get out of my face. And he's like, yes, ma'am. And she was like, when you find Sam, you tell him I want to see him and I want to see him now. And then he's like, yes, ma'am. And so, he go ahead back downstairs. And then you got Priscilla coming up to her saying, ma'am, I was just leaving for the day. Is there anything I could get you? And she's basically like, yes, your husband. Because Victoria just got to be a bitch anytime that she can be. And she was like, Priscilla told her, well, you enjoy that. And she was like, oh, is it over between you two? And then she's like, yes, ma'am. So have at it, And she was like, have at it, huh? And then Priscilla's like, yes, ma'am. And she was like, wow, you give up that easy, And she was like, with a big, old, huge black girl booty. I swear Victoria's a mess. And she was like, I think you would put up more of a fight. And so Priscilla's like, but no, ma'am. I know my value and some things aren't worth it, And so Victoria was like, I'm going to find out how you know my father. She's like, okay. She was like, I will. And when I do, she was like, ma'am, do you need anything else? Priscilla's over it. She ain't got time to play games with Victoria behind. So Victoria says no, and she's like, great, then have a nice day. And then she stops and she was like, but you know what? I really do hope your son makes a full recovery. And she was like, do you now? She was like, of course. And she was like, is that a threat? And then, Priscilla's like, now why would that be a threat? And then Victoria says, I sent something. And she was like, well, you have a good night. And so Priscilla go ahead and walk away. So then Sam comes up and he's like, ma'am, you wanted to see me? And she's like, look how cold she got. He was like, excuse me, ma'am. She was like, your wife. He was like, huh? And she's like, your wife attacked me. He's like, ma'am, okay. No, she didn't. And she was like, well, she did. He's like, ma'am. And she was like, what if she slapped me? And so, what would you do? And so he's like, well, I would have to do my job. And she was like, and what would that be? And then he's basically like, to keep you safe, ma'am, And she's like, you promise? And then he's like, yes, ma'am, I do. And so she was like, okay. And so he was like, where are you going, ma'am? And she was like, to the kitchen. And so he's like, ma'am. And she's like, what? And he was basically like, why are you going to the kitchen? And she was like, she was leaving. And he's like, Victoria. And she says, look at you. And he was like, don't. And so she was like, what do you think I'm going to do, huh? And then she want to start touching on him. Because mind you, she's supposed to be distracting him. So he was like, well, you was just going to try to provoke her. And she's like, no, I'm not. And he was like, well, if you're not, then you're staying here, okay? And I know you're not because you're staying here. And so she's talking about, I missed that from you. And he was like, what is that, ma'am? They kill me with all these damn ma'ams. And he's, she was like, all this forcefulness. And so, in the meantime, like I said, they just trying to keep him busy so that, they could distract him so they could find Cal. So he's like, listen, ma'am, I gotta go. And so, of course, you had Grip go in to see Donald, and they trying to get to the bottom of where Cal is at. And Sam is trying to also beat them to it. So at this point, they found where he's at. Grip is trying to get Cal out, but he can't because he can't get the damn door open. Cal is asking Grip, is Donald looking for me? He says, yeah, he is. And so, Cal is like, okay. And then Grip is saying, what should I do? And then Cal is like, well, first of all, you could let him know that I'm in here. And then, Grip is like, okay. And he was like, then, we got to get him alone somehow. And, he was like, does Donald know the code that could get you out of here? And he was like, yeah, he can get it from me. But Sam is the one that has all of this stuff. He's connected. It's connected to his tracker. And then Grip says, okay, I'll be back. And he was like, and Grip, hey, just stay calm, all right? And so Grip is like, I got it. And he says, I'm going to burn his ass, and I mean it, burn it. Right? So he says, we shall see. And then he telling him to wait again, and he telling him to give him a weapon. And so, Grip go ahead and take out his gun and gives him that. And they ain't gonna say give him both of them. So now Grip don't have no weapon because he done gave them both to Cal behind. And so I'm like, this is a hot daggone mess. And so, of course, Cal talking about, ooh, you messed with the wrong one. You messed with the wrong one now. And so I'm like, woo, Lord, this is a mess, right, y'all? So he putting one underneath his pants leg and put the other one in his back. And so then you got, Nancy and Richard talking, asking how was his day. He's saying it's long. She said, well, it's about to get longer because she lets him know. He was like, what is it? And she was like, Sharon's here. She basically been waiting for you all day. He was like, what's going on? She was like, she came through the door shaking. And he said, where is she? And she was like, you sit down, I'll get her. And he said, okay. So she basically, goes to get her, and she lets her know Sharon Richard is here. And of course, Sharon comes in and lets him know everything about, that Kareem Dunbehind went to the police and that they came to the pharmacy and all of that. And so he's like, Cal? She's like, no, the president. And he was like, she's like, what? He's like, yes, the president came there, okay? And he was like, the president was there. She was like, yeah, he was there at the daggone pharmacy, okay? And so he was like, how the hell? And she was like, I don't know. I don't have no idea. But me and Zell saw him there, or whatever the case may be. And so he was like, basically like, what the hell? And so he was like, well, what did he say? And she was like, he just basically said that Kareem went to the police, okay, with his dumb behind. Now, let me start. I mean, he didn't say dumb behind, I did, but he told him, Kareem went to the police last night. And she was like, I told him. And so he was like, Sharon, you knew you should not have done that. And she was like, now I know that. No, you knew it then, Sharon, but you still did it. And he was like, this is bad. And she basically was like, I know. And so he was like, listen. He was like, she told him, we haven't seen or heard anything from him since yesterday. So he was like, are you serious? And she said that he mentioned you too. And so Richard is like, what? He did what? And then she was like, the president mentioned you. And so Richard was basically like, what did he say? And she was like, he was asking if you or Sam knew anything. And so he said that since I've been dating Barry, since I dated Barry and I lived here before, it's a possibility that y'all could know something. And he was like, Sharon, I don't want you saying anything else. And she was like, no, I won't. And then he asked, where is Dell? And she was telling him that Dell went back to the apartment. And so he was okay, all right, look. He was like, you call him and tell him that I'm going to go there and pick him up. And then she was like, why? She was like, look, all of y'all need to stay here tonight, And Rich has been telling them for the longest that this ain't a game. Don't talk to nobody. Don't say nothing. Don't call nobody. Nothing. And they don't listen. And so he says, there's strength in numbers. And she was like, what about Kareem? He says, I don't know. Sharon, Kareem is gone, girl. He's gone. He's gone. He's gone. Like, if you didn't think he was gone before, he's gone. And so she was saying how Barry said that they killed Denise. And, Rich is like, look, Sharon, I'm going to be honest with you, Sharon. All right? He was like, I don't know. And she was like, what? And he was like, he can't just, kill him and leave him like he's a dog. And she was like, I can't believe this. I can't believe this. I can't believe this. And he was like, Sharon, is okay. She was like, it doesn't feel like it's okay. And he was like, I know, but it's okay. I'm going to do as much as I can to help you. And she was like, I just don't understand. I just don't understand. I went there to the freaking White House and he went crazy. And she was like, just call Dell and tell him that I'm going to pick him up, Well, Richard says, just call Dell and tell him I'm going to come pick him up. She says, all right. She was like, call him. He says, I'm sorry, y'all. Call him right now. And so she was like, okay. And she picks up the phone to call him. And, Zell basically answers. And, she's telling him, like, hey, and telling him, Richard is on his way. He's going to come and get you. And so Dale is like, what? And she was like, yeah, he thinks that we all should stay here at his house together. And so he's like, okay. She was like, so get your things, okay? And he was like, okay. And so she's just like, he's on his way. So he was like, all right, I'm here. So she was like, okay, bye. And, they go ahead and hang up the phone. And so as he's getting ready and putting his stuff in the daggone bag, you just see him walk out to the living room and go, I don't know what the hell he saw. What happened? Maybe Kareem is laying there dead. Maybe somebody came in the house. I don't know. I guess we shall see next week. That is the way that the episode ended. I'm kind of pissed because I want to see what the heck was going to happen with Sam and whether anybody knows that Grip went in there. And the fact that now Cal has 2 guns, y'all. But Max and Bobby was supposed to be on the way there. So I don't know, y'all. And I didn't look at the previews for next week because I never really look at the previews. I like to be surprised. But anyway, if y'all guys have any comments, if y'all have any, theories of what y'all think is going to happen next, put it in the comments. Tell me if you liked this episode, if you wanted to see more, what you liked, what you didn't like, and all that good stuff. Put it all in the comments. Let's discuss, okay? Like, share, comment, subscribe. Till next time. Toodaloo.